Aloha, everyone. My name is Becky Sampson. I am the host today for the Mentoring Monday, and I'm not usually the host for this show, but we have the Holamua festivities going on here on campus today, or this whole entire week. So I was asked to step in and to do this podcast, and I'm really excited about that. So for some of you who are just joining us for the first time, I just want to explain to you what this Mentoring Monday has been for. We are on episode, I believe this is 18. I can't believe it. We have students that come on and interview alumni and other professionals that are out in the field in their different professions, giving advice and wisdom and things that they have found to be successful in their career, of things that they would, want to tell a student or an alumni or other people looking to get into that profession. And so we are grateful today to have Tamatoa, I think I said that right, Jonassen, and he is actually in the Cook Islands today. And I want to welcome you to the show. And before we get started, aloha. Before we get started, please, anyone that is watching today, please, if you have any questions or comments, we love to have your comments come on live and we can bring you on if you have questions that you would like to ask him. I have lots and lots of questions because I love what he does and the field that he chose to go into. So we'll get into that in just a second, but please go ahead and put comments there down at the bottom, and we would love to know where you are listening in from. And if you have any questions, we'll go ahead and get those answered. So thank you and welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be involved in this. In the Cook Islands, we say kia orana. So kia orana to everyone that's tuned
in.
Kia
Did I say that right?
It's
close.
Kind of a combination of kia ora from New Zealand and I guess orana from Tahiti. Kia orana. I think we got it right.
Okay. You'll have to be patient with me because I'm learning all of this. Even though I've been here for a couple of years, I'm still learning all of the different sayings. So thank you and welcome. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, because you came here. You actually grew up here.
That's right.
Yeah. So tell us about sorry.
You could say my life is sort of revolved around BYU Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually born in Kahuku while my parents were attending BYU Hawaii.
You were a TVA baby.
I was a TVA baby. Yes, I am a TVA baby. So from there, what ended up happening is my parents moved around in the Pacific on different jobs. So I ended up growing in my youth up in the Cook Islands here in New Zealand, New Caledonia, which is French speaking. And then back into Hawaii when my father ended up taking on the teaching position as a professor at BYU Hawaii. So BYU Hawaii has definitely been part of my whole journey, you could say.
And what did your dad teach again?
He taught political science, and I think he was in charge of the political science division at some point.
And you are the oldest? Are you the oldest?
I'm their only son. There's 4 kids in total, so I have 3 sisters.
Okay. Great. And then, so tell us a little bit too about, so you came to school here, but so did your wife. Tell us a little bit about that and what did you study and things, because that's an interesting story as well.
Right. So when I was in Hawaii, my father moved there with the rest of the family. I ended up attending Kahuku High School. There's some great teachers out there. And growing up in the Laie community has also helped as well in terms of, instilling in me church ideals, a desire for scholastic excellence, etc. And so after Kahuku High School, I ended up going to BYU Hawaii. I decided to double major. I majored in political science. I always wanted to get into a legal profession. And I also majored in information systems, which is information technology. And I always found IT to be one of my passions. And then this is where, BYU Hawaii also becomes part of my journey, where after I graduated from BYU Hawaii, I went on the mission, served in the Taiwan mission, Mandarin Chinese speaking. came back and started working again at BYU Hawaii in the IT department. And my wife-to-be was finishing off her last semester at BYU Hawaii. She was just returned from mission in the Washington, D.C. mission. And the position I was working in does a lot of physical labor as well, pulling fiber optic cable, coaxial cable. And she decided to volunteer in the department. And normally that physical activity, most women don't volunteer. And so right from the bat, I knew there was something special about her.
You're like, I like that woman.
Right. And so she graduated from BYU Hawaii. And she wanted to do a practical experience. And so she ended up going to Utah, where two of her sisters live. And I had a tough decision to make, whether to continue dating her or to, so to speak, move on. And so I prayed about it, and I decided I'm going to move to Utah too. So I moved to Utah, got a job there, and within 6 months, I got admitted to law school in the University of Hawaii. So we had some decisions to make. I proposed to her. I'm grateful for she said yes. And then we moved back to Hawaii to go to law school.
So can I ask you a question real there? Because that was something that you and I talked about the other day. Sometimes students wonder, do I put my career on hold to pursue the marriage? What do you say about that? Because I mean, that's a decision. Those are obviously decisions that students worry about or, think about and that sort of thing. What would you say with that? I mean, I know you prayed
that's
about
always
it.
a tough decision. So any major decision, my advice would be you take it to the Lord. So you pray about it. It needs to make sense in your mind and in your heart. So you look at those two things. And any kind of relationship, any kind of pursuit requires work and effort. So there's a degree of work, there's a degree of faith, and if you do the best you can in both, Heavenly Father will take care of the rest. So that's really the best advice I can give, and you can probably apply that to any situation, whether you're dating someone, pursuing a career, or otherwise.
You didn't think you'd be giving dating advice?
No, I didn't.
But I like that you said that, though. It's got to make sense in your heart and in your head to be able to move forward, because I know that that's definitely something on the mind of the students when they're there. But so you went to Utah. You guys ended up, did you get engaged there? Yeah?
Yes, yes, we did.
Okay. And then you end up coming back to BYU, or you came back to Hawaii.
That's right.
To go to law school. What was that like?
Well, law school is tough. And I think anyone that's been to law school will say the same thing. To get into law school, you obviously need to take the law school admission test, the LSAT, and that can be a tough process in and of itself. I think what made it a bit more challenging for me is we decided to get married, and we got married 2 weeks into my first semester of law school. And anyone that's been through that would probably tell you, probably not the best time to get married. With law school, your first semester or two is crucial. You end up changing the way you think, really, using a different set of lenses to look at things, looking at it from a liability perspective, from like litigation perspective. And you end up studying the foundational courses in contracts, civil procedure, torts, etc. So your mind ends up being focused on the development and education you receive in law school. But I was very lucky and blessed. My wife understood what needed to be done. She helped support us through law school, essentially. I think at the time, my first year in law school, we were living on the North Shore. So that presented additional challenges. And we needed to move closer to law school. Thankfully, I also applied for some fellowships, and I ended up becoming a East-West Center graduate scholar for about 2 years. And that was a great blessing. They paid for essentially my law school for those 2 years and put us up in housing in downtown Honolulu. So to me, that was a a sign, you could say, or a acknowledgement of you put in as much effort as you're able to give. You do the best that you can, and Heavenly Father takes care of the rest.
Yeah, and I like that you said that there's resources that sometimes people don't know is available to them, and going in certain directions. I know we had someone in the office I told you about a couple of weeks ago that really wants to go to law school. And so being able to know what your resources are, what's available to you, getting people to help you. And I always like that phrase of whatever flows goes, right? If it starts flowing in that direction, then let's go there. Right. So what would you say if a student is interested in going into law school, what should they consider?
Well, obviously there's the finances side. You have to have a plan. You have to work on the LSAT. The LSAT is not something to be just glanced over. You got to make sure that you do well. The LSAT is designed really as a mechanism that tries to make you go as fast as possible. Anyone can answer the questions, but not everyone can do it in such a short time period that they provide. And so you have to practice. You have to go through several practice tests before doing the real LSAT. But a lot of schools don't just look at the LSAT score. They look at other things besides that. They look at your grades. So your grades make a big difference. They may look at the types of classes you took. So classes in political science, classes in conflict resolution, those are all helpful. And then the law school also looks at other things you may have been involved in as well, like extracurricular activities, leadership situations, situations in which the practice of law or legal issues actually came into your life and how they played out and how you dealt with them. So you look at those things if you are considering applying to law school. Law school isn't for everyone, but a legal education can help you in whatever you choose to do. So if you choose to get involved in maybe, business, involved with corporations, even charity work, having a legal education will empower you to do the job even better. So I would encourage everyone to consider law school, but it's up to you to decide whether you want to actually continue and pursue it.
So I know your dad was a political science teacher and that's what you majored in, but what drew you to this industry?
So one of the interesting things about law that always captivated me was using law can actually be a mechanism to help other people. And I always saw doctors and lawyers similarly. And in fact, I think there was some sort of a devotional given by one of the associate deans to the BYU Provo Law School. And he actually used law and medicine and kind of equated it as being able to heal people's lives, being able to help others. And, I always had that feeling that, you can use the law to help, and you can use the law to defend those people that need that help.
I love that. That's a really great point. I never even thought about that, is that you can use the law. I mean, we all know that you can help people, but to really serve people on a different level than other professions. And there's a lot of different things that law provides. It's not just, like you said, not just business or family or criminal or whatever. There's just a lot of different. And did you get an opportunity to explore a lot of those when you were going through school?
Yeah, so law school, obviously, there's a lot of different fields that you can start focusing in. One of my passions I had through law school was intellectual property. So I studied more on patents, copyrights, trademarks, even got involved in one of the moot courts in trademarks. Ended up doing, I think, part of that competition out in California. So that was a good experience. And I also ended up getting involved in various other fields as well while in law school. Conflict resolution was one of the foremost. As part of my involvement in the East-West Center, I ended up working towards and attaining a certificate, a graduate certificate in conflict resolution that was offered by the Matsunaga Institute for Peace. And I also ended up getting a certificate in Pacific and Asian legal studies as I was trying to focus some of my studies. And so those ended up helping me diversify some of my interests as well. While in there, I also ended up doing prosecution clinic, and I ended up topping the class for criminal justice, which somewhat surprised me. But I felt a bit led there. So after law school, after I graduated and passed the bar exam, I ended up working as a prosecutor, deputy prosecuting attorney in downtown Honolulu for a couple months.
You said that was challenging, yeah?
Absolutely.
What was most challenging for you?
I think probably the volume of work. There is quite a number of prosecutors, but the amount of volume is somewhat staggering. For instance, I think I've seen more than 400 cases come to arraignment just for one morning in one of the courts. And you get a number of cases that are set for trials. So if you want a trial experience as a lawyer, the prosecution office is definitely one of the places to go. You end up going up against not only public defenders, but also defense counsel as well from various fields. And during my time there, they ended up pushing us quite fast through the system. For instance, I think the first court you end up being in, which is regular traffic court, you may normally spend roughly between 3 to 6 months. This is what I was told. I ended up spending only 1 day in that court before they moved me to the next court. And so they moved us quite rapidly through the system. And they ended up rotating us through all the different courts. So I was in the Wahiawa court, the Waianae court, the Eva Beach court, all of them around Honolulu. And to me, I was thinking, just married a few years ago. We had our first child in law school, had our second child while we were studying for the bar exam. And the life of a prosecutor with such a heavy volume wasn't quite conducive to family life.
Yeah, you had mentioned that the other day, that it was really hard. You get up really early in the morning, you're gone all day, and then you're studying all night for the next morning.
Right. Yeah. So I wouldn't see my wife very often. So it's not very good for family life. But it was an awesome job, great opportunities to learn, to grow, great camaraderie between all the different deputy prosecuting attorneys. We would regularly be in each other's office 11 o'clock at night, midnight, just consulting each other on some of the things that are coming the next day or coming a week from now. So it's a great place to work, but not quite conducive to family life. And so I think around about November or so of that year, I was thinking, do I want to continue? Greater opportunities to grow as a trial attorney. But, there was a bit of sacrifice they have to make on the family side. So as I was praying about it, which was interesting, the Cook Island Prime Minister, former Prime Minister now, he went to Hawaii and spoke to the Cook Island community. And I just happened to be there. And one of the things he said struck a chord with me. He said, get your education and come home. And as I prayed about that, I decided, that is the right thing for me to do at that point in time. So I handed in my month's notice and prepared my family to move to the Cook Islands.
So let's talk about that right now, because I know when you brought that up the other day, you said that was like a major leap of faith, right? Like you didn't have anything set in stone. Your wife's like, what are we doing? Like, you're stopping all of this that you had already. How many years had you practiced here in Hawaii?
Less than a year.
Okay. So so right out there, and you felt the call to go back to the Cook Islands. Like, how did you really, I know you felt it, but how'd you really put that faith, make that leap?
So any leaps like that requires a lot of faith. But for me, I think the greater faith was on the part of my wife. So she had to trust me that this was the right decision to make. There was no job lined up here. And so we came here and I started looking for a position. And then fortuitously, as things turn out, there was a position opening in one of the local trust companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I applied and got the position. And so I started practicing in the offshore financial corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
Very different from a trial attorney experience. This is a desk job, reviewing trust deeds and contracts, and essentially you're assisting, planners, financial advisors, and other attorneys with their clients.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting world, the offshore industry. You have a lot of people with tons of money, millionaires, billionaires, and you're part of their structure to make sure that assets are protected and properly planned for.
And how was that
So,
for you, jumping into that kind of role?
so I made the transition very well.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the education at law school dealt with trust and estate planning, and what was interesting is they talked specifically about Cook Island trusts in the classroom and the textbook. And so I had some familiarity with it before I even started studying in law school. And so it was a fine transition for me. So I spent probably over 3 years working as in-house counsel inside that trust company. And then I made a move to work for government. There was a government agency called the Financial Services Development Authority. And essentially that authority deals with the promotion and development of the financial sector and financial products. And so I became the CEO. It's a very small entity, but there's a very large mandate. And so I ended up, in many different places in the world. Went to Paris, went to London, went to Singapore a couple times, Hong Kong a couple times, China a couple times. So traveled widely because it's an industry that operates on the international level. So a lot of good growth opportunities that came out of that experience as well. While I was on that FSDA agency, I was also involved in the Cook Island Law Society. So I was on the council for about 4 years. So I'm admitted to practice both in Hawaii and in the Cook Islands. And there was a capacity assessment that was done on the Ministry of Justice here in the Cook Islands. And it showed a lot of the issues and challenges that they were experiencing. And so that piqued my interest. And it was also an opportunity that I could take up to try and help, bring the experiences, the education I acquired along the way from UAU Hawaii and UH and the Matsunaga Institute for Peace, and see what I can do to assist the country with the Ministry of Justice challenges. So I applied for the position, and it was given to me. And now I'm coming up almost 2.5 years into my position. So I'm not currently the head of the Ministry of Justice. We've been able to tackle a number of those challenges, but there's still a lot of challenges left to be tackled.
Well, I like something that you said. It gave you an opportunity to serve your people, right? Give you a greater level of service that you may not have known when you first got there, or that's at least what you sparked you to wanting to go down there. So tell everybody kind of like, what's interesting. So actually, sorry, what's interesting to me too is that this keeps coming up in people's stories is that you got a little bit of taste of what it was like even, years before when you were studying about the Cook Island trusts, right? And so I'm a true believer that God prepares us along the way for what he has in store for us. And you might not have known that back then. But
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So how have you felt like you've been prepared, I guess, for the work that you're doing now, and where are you going? What are you going to do from this point on?
Right. So one of the interesting things in some of my prior experience, like at working for Southpac in the trust industry and working at FSDA, there was always challenges that related to kind of a rebrand. So kind of building on what's already been done, but branding it in such a way where it's kind of new. So we changed the logos for Southpac when I was involved there, and also for FSDA. And ironically, the same issue came up when working with the Ministry of Justice. So some of the experiences, as you say, you kind of are led down the path where it builds up, and you can apply the things that you learn later on in the engagements that you have. So maybe it might be good to kind of explain a bit about the Ministry of Justice.
Yeah.
Most people that hear about Ministry of Justice, they just think about justice, but being a small island state or a large ocean state, depending on how you look at it, the Cook Islands Ministry of Justice has several different functions. The first being, administering the courts. So there's the High Court, the Court of Appeal, there's Justice of the Peace jurisdictions, there's High Judge jurisdiction, Court of Appeal jurisdictions. The ultimate appellate court is actually in the Privy Council in London, but we don't actually deal with that jurisdiction. We just assist with preparing cases that end up going down that route. But one of the other things the Ministry of Justice does is it actually looks after the land system in the Cook Islands. So we have a land survey department. They keep all the survey maps. They authorize new survey maps for the whole Cook Islands. We deal with land applications that come through court that get processed, and then our registry of titles gets updated. So we track all land ownership and the actual lands. An extension to that is tracking all the traditional tribal titles that come with land as well. The other things we also deal with are several registries. So we deal with the birth registry, the death registry, the marriage registry. Under the statutes, as the Secretary of Justice, I'm also the Registrar General over those three registries as well. So I have some personal stake in making sure it gets done right. We also have the Domestic Companies Registry, the Incorporated Societies Registry, and the Personal Property Securities Registry that deals with registering your priority of security interests. And we're also over the electoral roll that's used in parliamentary elections. So when you say the Ministry of Justice, it doesn't do justice, you could say, to all the functions that we actually are over. There's quite a number. And we have to deliver it at a service level on a national level, which can be a challenge sometimes.
So what kind of student, I mean, the thing that comes to me is like, what kind of student, if somebody is listening to this, what's the type of person that really would thrive in this kind of industry?
So we've actually had a couple interns that's come through the Ministry of Justice. And for the Ministry of Justice, there's a number of things. If you're interested in the justice system, if you're interested in land survey is a very technical field. And there's also corporate services that, assists all the different functions of the ministry. And so that involves HR responsibilities, information technology responsibilities, some finance responsibilities. And so, almost any field that you can think of, you could try and relate it, and there can be some overlap. One of the interesting things that happen is in the courts, you see all kinds of things that happen, both criminal, civil, and otherwise. And so any experience that you bring to the table can assist, in how you assist those processes and the people involved in those processes. So that's kind of the Ministry of Justice in a nutshell. And so the involvement that I have is, on the management level. So I'm the most senior manager in the Ministry of Justice, and this position manages the managers and gets into a lot of detail in some of the operations, procedures, processes. And one of the rebranding that needed to happen was, before I came on, the challenges presented in the capacity assessment report did say there's a lot of things that needed to be changed. One of the foremost was what I pinned down as an HR issue. Before I came on, all of the staff of the Ministry of Justice, on average, was the lowest paid in all of government. Then I spent the first 6 months taking everybody's job description and rewriting all of them, rebanding them to the proper band, and effectively increasing everybody's pay. So now everyone is closer to average.
You're their best friend.
But you see, that can't be done without work. So you have to put in the work to make it happen.
Yeah.
And then I think the next thing on my list was to take care of the facility issues.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, some parts of the building that were insecure, not working. The air conditioning was not operational for a number of years. So in the last year, we painted the whole building, retiled some of the places, put on new doors, new locks, security cameras. And so it's very different how it looks now than how it was before. And then we did the same thing for one of our outer islands, Aitutaki. We renovated the courthouse there as well. And I just got back from Achu last week, where we rebuilt one of the courthouses in Achu.
That must make you feel really good to see, like, actually physically see the improvements that you've been a part of. I'm sure there's a group of people that are working on that, but to being able to see and also see how it changes, what you're doing is changing other people's lives and their perspectives and their attitudes and things like that. It's making a big difference.
Yeah, so it does make me happy to see those positive changes. And so what we're doing moving forward is focusing more on the IT side of things, the processes, the legislation. We've already identified a number of things that we're going to be upgrading. And we just went through a process of mini workshops with the staff where we identified new goals for our strategic plan, which we're launching tomorrow. And in that strategic plan, it just specifies all the goals that we want to achieve in the next 5 years to deal with the challenges that are still remaining, and lifting the excellence of the service delivery in the ministry across the board. So I think we're able to make positive contributions as we apply ourselves and the experiences that we bring.
And now you're taking your IT.
Right.
Right.
So that's where my IT background comes in and helps assist as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask, one of the questions is how do you see the education that you received here at BYU Hawaii and also UH, because that's where your other, how have you seen that impact or be able to use for the good in the work that you're doing?
Right. So, I got an IT education at BYU Hawaii. They didn't teach you IT in law school. And, I thought it was phenomenal. And it's all based on the relationships you have with the professors. How the education is there. It's up to us to grab it and apply it and use it. And so while I was at BYU Hawaii, I was able to get some experience in the programming side and the networking side. And then I was working part-time and got involved in desktop and systems. I think one of my greatest experiences or memories, you could say, was working in the computer lab on assignments. There's this one professor, Professor Colton. He's no longer there, but he's somewhere on the west coast of the U.S. And he set up a system where you had this computer called GradeBot, and you type in your programs and you submit it to GradeBot, and GradeBot would automatically return a result to you, whether you pass. And I took the opportunity to just spend a whole week and did all the assignments within that 1 week, and I got my A after a week.
For the whole class?
For the whole semester, yes.
Wow.
The whole class. But that's the type of caliber of professors that you have working, that they have these things and they have these novel approaches that can help you really excel. There's a number of other professors as well that I could talk about that had those opportunities for us to learn more and try and achieve as much as we can.
Yeah. And what would be one of the things that you would advise students right now, or what would you have told your earlier self, right, when you came to school? Now, knowing what you know now and in the profession that you're in now, what kind of advice would you give somebody just starting or maybe a couple of years into their schooling?
Well, I think it's kind of the same thing that I mentioned earlier. You need to trust in the Lord. There is a God. He does love us. He wants what's best for us. And the sooner we kind of wrap our heads around that, I think, and remind ourselves about it, I think we can use that power and apply it to the decisions that we need to make in our life.
I love that. Yeah, I love that it's, it always, and I think you and I had this conversation before, is that we're just staying grounded with the Spirit and having the Spirit guide us to where we need to go and what classes we need to take. And, what do we need to study? How is our unique abilities and skills and talents that God's given us, how can they be best utilized for his work, right? By the way, I think we have one of your long lost friends that just piped in.
Oh.
Do you know Mele?
How's it going?
Long time no see, classmate. Welcome so much to the show. We love when people pipe in and say hello. That's awesome. Okay, so I know that you have, you've been through a lot, and through any other advice that you'd give to students, stay grounded and be with the Spirit, but anything else that you can think of how to utilize their time here at BYU Hawaii?
I think there's a combination of things at BYU Hawaii that you can take advantage of. One is the networking.
Yep.
You have people from different backgrounds. You are able to gain a greater appreciation for diversity. And some of the friendships that you make, last for a lifetime. For instance, Mila just said hi on Facebook. And alongside that there's opportunities that come along your way. And if you have if you're available to take on that opportunity, they can bless your life further down the road. And I've seen that multiple times when I was on a mission and thereafter. On the mission, you set up your plan, you want to go and you contact these people in this place, and somehow along the way, you meet someone that's looking for you. And so those opportunities, it's similar to education. The opportunities come across your path. Don't be shy in taking those opportunities and seeing where it leads you.
Take action. And I also see that you're a great example of that, because even getting into, well, first of all, going back to even following your wife, right? Pursuing your wife to saying, hey, this is what I want. And I'm going to make a leap of faith to go follow her. And she said yes. And then you guys came back here, and then getting into law school, and then taking the opportunities that you were given there, just jumping full on. And, being, one of the words that you've used throughout the podcast has been led. Like, allow yourself to be led. I think that's what I kind of got from what you say is, and that's the same thing here, is if there's an opportunity that comes your path, take it, see where it leads you.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time. I know you're super busy, and I'm sure you have a ton more you could share with us. I just want to really encourage people that if, is there a way that they can reach out to you if they have any questions or anything? You're on Facebook, yeah?
I'm on Facebook, or I have an email address.
Okay,
I'm more than
awesome.
happy to accept emails.
Yeah, and you are in the Cook Islands, and along with your wife, and you have how many kids now?
3 boys.
3 boys. They probably keep you guys super busy.
I think they're 3 full-time jobs.
Yeah. Keeps your wife super busy, I'm sure. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and spending the time that you have. Thank you for the service that you do, because it sounds like you're making some real progress down there. And so anyone that would like to reach out to you, I encourage them to do that. So thank you so much, Tamatoa.
Mahalo.
Mahalo. Hold on just 1 second. We'll be with you right afterwards. But okay, thank you guys, everybody, for joining us today on the Mentoring Monday podcast. We do this every Monday at 1:00, where we interview alumni or other professionals in the field, any kind of different field. Today we talked about law, which is what's so cool about the law is that there's just so many different fields that you can go into. And if that's something that you are interested in, then please reach out. And there's a lot of professors here, even on the BYU Hawaii campus, that would be able to help you navigate that. And also here at the Career Center, at the Ho'okele department, we love to help you with any kind of resources that you need. Again, my name is Becky Sampson, and I've been the host for this podcast today. And make sure you also join us on Friday. We do something called the Aloha Friday at 3 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, where we interview alumni and talk more like talk story, where we tell stories about their experiences here, where they're at now in their life. And that's also great. You can see all of our podcasts at the BYU Hawaii Ho'okele YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us today, you guys, and have a great, great week. Bye-bye.